Ryan says, my government. When you say my government, are you referring to the John Key government or to the current New Zealand government? The targeting of me is something that I have covered pretty extensively in the past. The best links I can think of off the top of my head would be my documentary Diary of a Person of Interest. If you haven't seen that, just type in YouTube Diary of a Person of Interest. You can see, it was actually the first time I ever put myself on camera, and I talked all about what happened to me, who did it, why they were doing it, how they were doing it, and what I went through in New Zealand. It's probably better that you just watch that than me trying to rehash the whole thing here. Also, there's an article on Contraspin called 5i versus Kim.com. I'll put the link in. That is another really good source of information about what was happening to us in New Zealand. So 5i versus Kim.com is where I wrote about the targeting of Kim and Kim's situation. This is several years ago that I wrote this article, but I also there's a partial timeline in there of events that happened to us in New Zealand and the targeting of myself and my media team. Do I think with the current Ardern government will stand up for me? Well, I haven't heard anything from the current Ardern government. I don't know enough about their stance. I mean, what they say they'll do before they get into power and what they do after they get into power are generally two different things. For the Ardern government to stand up for me, they would need to be prepared to tackle some massive systemic issues with the intelligence services in New Zealand, of which there are many issues. The biggest thing that prevents me from going back to New Zealand is that the overseas spies, particularly the United States spies, act in New Zealand on New Zealand soil with total impunity, total and utter impunity. And the level of action that would need to be taken to prevent that from happening is pretty massive. And I think that if Ardern's government was prepared to tackle the Five Eyes to that extent, that there would be a huge amount of heat come down on their heads, in pretty short order. I think that a lot of the dastardly stuff that was happening in New Zealand under the Key government, where all of the government departments and resources were used to persecute targets, and particularly journalists. If you've read Nicky Haga's book, Dirty Politics, he wrote about dozens of journalists who he had evidence that dozens of journalists in New Zealand were targeted by the government. They use what Julian Assange and WikiLeaks call a whole of government approach, referencing an Australian document that talked about a whole of government approach being used in the targeting of WikiLeaks. That's exactly what was happening in New Zealand. So everybody from the police agencies to the intelligence agencies to all of the social agencies and government departments were utilised and exploited to destroy a target. I don't think that is happening under the Ardern government, but I don't think that the Ardern government could protect me from the CIA or the NSA or the international military apparatus that is active in these countries. So, it would be nice to think that the Ardern government could do something about it, but I don't have a lot of faith in that. I see that we think that the Ardern government is in control, but everything I've studied tells me and shows me and evidences that actually the politicians that we elect are not in control, or the military are in control. In fact, every single Western nation is a military dictatorship with a veneer of democracy. So this whole like vote, get out and vote once every 3 or 4 years thing, you're not ever actually voting for the people who are running the country, because the people who are running the country are the military. And it's just totally false for us to think that our elected leaders are the ones that are ultimately in control or pulling the strings. It is a transnational military conglomerate that is truly in charge of the Western nations and many of the third world nations as well. So on that basis, I think it's kind of irrelevant, really, whether Arjun's government wants to stick up for me, because I don't believe that they could protect me.